V'daber Moshe l'om leimor. Hilchotz mitchem anoshim latzover. You should recruit from among you men for the tzova, anoshim. So Rashi, what are anoshim? Tzadikim. I mean, the only ones who qualify for this battle, that be tzadikim. Other wars, we don't find that to be tzadikim. But for this particular battle, that be tzadikim. Chen b'char lo anoshim, chen noshim chacham v'yeduim. So over here, a prerequisite, the one who's qualified to go to battle had to be a tzaddik. V'yu al Midyan. Lo seif nikmas Hashem b'Midyan. So over here, the Ohr HaChaim asks a question. V'yu bid, what's al Midyan? They should come upon Midyan. They should go against Midyan. V'yu bid Midyan. And how many people went to battle? Elef lamate, 1,000 of each tribe. Chomatus Yisrael tishlu hatzovo. So that's another question. The Ohr HaChaim asks, I mean, by other battles, we don't find there were any limitations on the numbers. Here, it's specifically 1,000. Normally, we go to battle. Whoever's eligible to go to battle goes to battle. Well, evidently, this war here is not the conventional war that you're fighting against the enemy, as the Ohr HaChaim will explain. So the Ohr HaChaim over here, HaKodesh explains, he says, V'omro v'yu al Midyan. So he cites something from the Zohar, based on Kabbalah. He says, this can be understood based on what the Mekubalim say, that the more a person is spiritualized and is relieved of impurity, this is the basis for ascent, to ascend. He sowed hayurida, and the klip, we say the husk, which causes all the blockage. That is the basis for yurida, for descent. When a person sins, as we discussed, the Rav Chaim B'Loshen cites the Zohar, it actually creates an impure force which engulfs the person. The effect, the consequence is that it actually causes the person to have a descent. Upora pradze pirshub parshas kisiso. Kisisas rosh b'nei Yisrael. The word sisa means when you uplift the heads of the Bnei Yisrael. Sha'achote yikov ka'agmon rosho v'omid beged ha'shiflos. The person who sins, he's like with a bent head, like a certain fruit where the top of the head is bent. V'omro v'yu al Midyan. What is it? You'll be upon Midyan. Pirshul yu behema tuma sobevis hashvos l'Midyan. Meaning you'll ascend. You'll be above. I mean, what Midyan brought upon you, the impurity due to the Balpor and the sexual involvement, you're going to ascend above them. That's Al Midyan. When you go to this battle, you must be upon Midyan, above them. So who's the person who's qualified? If a person is a tzaddik, a person is totally relieved from this, totally. V'omro losis nikbas Hashem. Gamzem histakmus lasogas an nekomo. Shilosim shnei kavonis an nekomo likinis Hashem. Asher gormu bitul mitzosu ritzoni yisborach. Originally, Hashem said this battle should be to avenge the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu says it's Hashem, because what was the intent of the Midianites? To undermine the spiritual standing of the Jewish people, which would cause that they should be deserve to be destroyed. As Bilam had said, Elokeim shalelu sonizimo, the God of the Jews, he does not tolerate licentiousness. It's not because of the Jews, the 24,000 Jews who died in the plague. It's not you coming to avenge your brothers. He says, if that is the intent, the mitzvah you're doing, V'agam sheshem Oma Alev Nikpas by Yisrael. So the question about Hashem says, B'nai Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Nikpas Hashem, you're avenging, it's purely for the sake of Hashem. It's nothing personal here. El lo Oma Elov Shiomar Yisrael Loshen Zeh. El Shidvorav Hoyim Moshe Nekom Nikas B'nai Yisrael. Avenged the adventures of Bnei Yisrael because they actually undermined their kedusha. Moshe Rabbeinu understood to be able to achieve the ultimate nekama, that the Jews were diminished because what the Midianites had tried to bring about. Therefore, he says, Nikmas Hashem, you have to do it l'shem shamayim. It's not a personal gripe because your brothers were killed in this battle, but rather, since they tried to detach us from Hashem, l'kaim ad nekama al Yisrael she's nitztavu aleh b'mokum b'mayim nekom. He said earlier, after you go to this battle, you'll pass on. What does that mean? So he explains that until the Midianites are destroyed, Moshe is not ready to pass away. It's not only your death is contingent, will be determined by the destruction of the people. That you're not ready to pass on until they're destroyed. See, he asks the question, why couldn't he pass on right before they're destroyed? So we explained this. It's not such a difficult question. Moshe, the moment they're destroyed, they're ready to go into Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu, they're under his leadership until they're ready to go in. So until Midyan is destroyed, they're not ready to go in. This issue has to be avenged. He explained something interesting. There's a question, why when the story of Zimri was taking place, why was Pinchas the only one to react or respond? So Rashi cited the Midrash, which is the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Pinchas goes to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, didn't you teach us that a person who has relations in a public setting with a non-Jewish woman, if you're a zealot, you're supposed to kill that person. Didn't you teach us that? He says, yes. He says, if so, the Rebbe should do it. Moshe should do it. He says, no, but since you remembered it and I forgot it, therefore that's a sign, an indication. It's for you to carry out the mitzvah, not me. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. So the question says, Nis'almi men halacha. The halacha was forgotten. So Rashi says, why was it forgotten? Because Magal Musus Hayidei Zakai. So Pinchas should be meritorious to have this mitzvah that ultimately he ascended to become a Kohen. And all his descendants were Kohanim, although initially he was born after his father was anointed to be the Kohen. His father was Elazar. That's Rashi. However, the Medrash says, there's a Medrash which says differently, that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't react immediately, it's his Rafu Yodov. He was a little, which is hard to believe, he was lackadaisical. And there was a claim against him. And Pinchas, with alacrity, immediately responded. So he explains, the Ohr HaChaim HaKodesh, that even though ultimately Pinchas, Zimri was killed, and the Kiddush Hashem took place, and what could have happened did not happen, it averted this total annihilation of Jewish people, but Moshe Rabbeinu had to be atoned. What would the atonement be? He has to be the one to lead the Jews into battle. That would be the last small detail to deal with this issue, because he was Rafu Yodov, because he was lackadaisical. Therefore, if he would have passed before, that means there wouldn't have been a tikkun, there wouldn't have been a correction in this particular area where there was considered at Moshe Rabbeinu's level a shortcoming. Hashem is exacting with his tzaddikim as much as a hairbreadth. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu had to lead them into battle for this reason. So he says something interesting. He explains, quotes the Medrash, Hasholem as a nisrapid masa zimri, v'lo also dvar k'may morim zal, sherofu yodov, v'hikber Hashem al shalom nokam at she'omet Pinchas. There was a claim against Moshe Rabbeinu because he did not avenge, he did not react immediately until Pinchas did it. L'zeshiki as man p'tiroso. As a result of that, when it was time for him to pass on, Oma Hashem Elov Tikkun L'Dov Rezer, Shenimna Misnakeim Meoser Resha, a correction for this shortcoming, that you did not immediately avenge those who do evil. Yokum V'Yisnakim Midyan Shisivu. You should be the one to be involved, instructing them how to avenge the vengeance. V'acha Sheyashlim HaTikkun, and after this is corrected, Yosef Elamov made certain, and therefore there's no longer any level of prosecution. This is one of the Chazdei Hashem, because he wants them to be ultimately, when they go on that scale, to be evaluated, there should not be a trace of criticism, that the record should be perfect. Therefore, he wanted Moshe Rabbeinu to be directly involved in the destruction of Midyan, to atone, to correct that slight shortcoming, which on Moshe Rabbeinu level was considered not where it should have been. This is similar what he says, defined by the snare. Moshe Rabbeinu was in a dialogue with Hashem for a week, and at the end of the discussion, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, but why don't you choose the one who normally represents you? He's referring to Aaron. That was considered a sin. And Hashem says to Moshe, Aaron, your brother the Levi, although he was a Levi until now, he will be the Kohen. That because Moshe had overstepped his bounds over here, this was a disrespect, therefore he forfeited the Kuna. That's explicit. So seemingly, the punishment for that, he forfeited the Kuna. That's Kapora. But we find later, Ohr HaChaim points out, when it came to install Aaron and Bonov, he had to install them personally. He had to bathe, he had to immerse them in the mikvah, he had to dress them. The full initiation, installation of the Kohanim, it had to be him. Why? The Ohr HaChaim asked why. I mean, it was painful enough that this could have been his children for all eternity. They could have been the Kohanim. He made a mistake, he failed. It was taken from him. I mean, why put salt on the wounds? That's the question Ohr HaChaim asks. So Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh explains over there. He says that when a person sins, even when you have kapora, if the kapora is not complete, there's a slight degree of detachment. He explains it. He compares it. If you have a branch which is starting to be detached from the trunk, so the energy, the ecology is not complete. You have to repair it, that the branch be fully attached to the trunk, that all the nourishment of the tree should go through the branch. Moshe Rabbeinu, after that chet, although he forfeited the kuna, and the branch was nearly 100% connected, there was a slight disconnect. So to complete the connection, that should be fully integrated into the tree, the Moshe Rabbeinu should be fully attached to Hashem. He needed this extra slight amount of tikkun, of correction. He personally had to. He had to do ba'avo. It's not it was pain. It wasn't that he should experience. It's not he's putting salt on the wounds, but he's doing ba'avo because he understands what the value of that is, and he quotes the Gemara Brachos, that as when you say a blessing shechiyonu for something of good fortune, you say dynamis with simcha. So he says, because if a person would understand the value of the negative, what it accomplishes, as Moshe Rabbeinu is being fully reattached to Hashem, that he should have the ultimate benefit of that, if that is the ultimate good. And that's therefore Moshe Rabbeinu personally had to install them, ba'ava, with love. Similarly here, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, Rafa Yodav, he didn't act immediately. He should have, but you understand, the Chil Hashem immediately was quelled. But Moshe, you should have been there at the first one. That there was slight delay, for that slight delay, there's a basis for criticism, for prosecution of Sota. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medacting in tzaddikim k'chut ha'sayra, now it's a new understanding. It's not only because he should have understood, because Hashem has the avo for the tzaddik, that he wants the tzaddik to be attached at the ultimate level, that there should not be a trace of prosecution of the sota. Therefore, he's medak tzaddik k'chut ha'sayra, because he wants the tzaddik to merit the ultimate. An ordinary person who's not careful, give you an example. The Gemara says that if a person's torasum noso, a person that is Torah is his umnus, is his craft, he's absolved from certain things. But if you're not torasum noso, then you have to do the mitzvah. What's torasum noso? So the Rush explains torasum noso means just as a person is involved in his own financial situation, and you're not going to take a break from that. And let's say you're involved in the most important negotiation. You're not going to detach yourself from that for anything, because of the way you relate to the value of that negotiation. A person's Torah is so esteemed and so valued that for no reason, unless halacha you permit it, you're not detaching yourself from Torah. Nothing has that level of importance. That's Torah sub nosa. So a person who's at a certain level, he's always attached to it. So let's say at one time you become detached. Well, you shouldn't have become detached. It's a claim against that person. That person is always detached. That's where he is. He's not there. But the person who's Torah sum noso, if you have that detachment, well, you shouldn't have that detachment. Although 99.999% of the time you are attached, it's considered a shortcoming. Because of your understanding and where you want to be, and Hashem wants you to be where you want to be, you should be fully attached. Therefore, it is a claim. And that's tzaddik, tzaddik k'chut ha'sayra. The reason why Hashem is so, not because you have a level of clarity only, because as he says here, it's avoso, because of his avo for its tzaddikim, he wants them to have the ultimate benefit, and therefore, to bring that about, he prevents opportunity for them to be fully attached. And therefore, he holds them to he sets the bar to another level for them, because he wants them to be the ultimate beneficiaries. Hashem. So we sing Krishma. Let's say you love God, but when it comes to relieving yourself of your money, there's some hesitation. You know something? But I love you with all my heart. So if you love me with all my heart, why don't you give your life immediately? Why was there any hesitancy? If you love me with all your assets, it was a question of the cost factor that you'd forfeit all your possessions. Why was there a delay? The answer is, Hashem makes this evaluation. It must be if you fully meet all the prerequisites at every level to demonstrate that's considered total love. But if in any of these areas you fall short of it, you love him, but not at that level that you think you love him. You know, as they say, you have to put the person's feet to the fire to know exactly where he stands. Otherwise, we believe a lot of things. We think we're there. It's not simple. No, the whole story with the son of Tokif, the one who authored it, the whole story, he was a minister in one of the Bavarian states. His name was Rav Kalatsky. It was time of the Rishonim, about that era, and the king, he was the advisor to the king, and the other ministers were jealous and of the relationship that he had with the king. So they had convinced the king, who was a Christian, that the only way he could have that post is he has to convert to Christianity. Otherwise, he can't have the post. So he calls in Rav Kalatsky, and he says to him, I've been thinking about it, that the only way you could retain your post, you have to convert to Christianity. So Rav Kalatsky says, give me 3 days to think about it. Okay? So the king was okay with it. After 2 minutes, he walks out, comes right back in, he says, I should have given the answer immediately. I shouldn't have said, give me 3 days. I will not convert on any circumstance. I believe in what I believe, And that's where it begins, that's where it ends. Immediately he gave the order that they amputated his hands, they amputated his feet, they gouged out his eyes, and they beat him. And that's the story. Because but why did he do that? He knew that what the consequence would be. Because would he have a right even to indicate for a moment that there's a moment hesitation that you're going to convert to Christianity? For that moment, there's a claim against him. Therefore, this was the kapora for that moment hesitation. And that's what he said in Sana Tokef. They brought him into the shul on Rosh Hashanah, and he said in Tokef, Malochem Yechafezun, what din in Shamayim is, and so on and so on. Till today, we say it in Sana Tokef, which he authored when he was on this stretcher, and soon after that, he passed away. So, right after he said in Sana Tokef, he expired from the torture and what they did to him. But again, it's the hesitation. How do you hesitate? It's at this level. So even if you give your money, even if you give your life, if there's a level of hesitation, you never know what kind of claim there's against the person. There shouldn't be a hesitation. Give you an example. God forbid, if a person's child is going to be killed and you're able to save his life, you hesitate. A person doesn't hesitate. The child's life, chas v'shalom, is at stake. No hesitation. Because that indicates to what degree you value your life's child. So if you value kovod shamayim to such a degree, how could there be hesitation? The hesitation is an indication you're not where you should be, which is a shortcoming. Therefore, if you're at that special level that's expected of you, there's a claim against you. There's Moshe Rabbeinu. Rafa Yodov, since he was lackadaisical, he didn't react or respond immediately. That's a claim. Therefore, he had to be involved in the destruction of Midyan. Therefore, he did not pass away, but he actually instructed every aspect of this war was under his guidance. Zealotry mentioned in Torah is Shimon and Levi destroying the community of Shechem because Dinah was raped. So, and miraculously they were not killed. And it says when Avraham Avinu originally was in Spalel that his grandchildren should not be killed in this battle. And they were young boys. One was 13, one was 14. They were young boys. And it says they came upon the city Betach being confident. They were confident in the schus of Avraham Avinu because Avraham Avinu had prayed, was mispal that they shouldn't be harmed. But they were reprimanded by Yaakov. Yaakov reprimanded them. He said, don't you realize we're a handful of people, we're a small family, we're surrounded by all these nations. And therefore, so the claim was not that they, God forbid, Chashem did genocide. The timing was wrong. But they both did an act of zealotry. So what did they say to their father? Why didn't they consult? Because in the Nevolim Nasis Israel, an abomination took place among the Jewish people that the daughter of Yaakov was raped. They couldn't tolerate it. That's the kanoi. But yet the Medrash fast forwards, but yet Zimri was a descendant of Shimon. Here is antecedent brings about a Kiddush Hashem because he cannot tolerate this kind of behavior. And Zimri, he's gone into the pit so deep that he can't come out of the pit. And who avenges it? The descendant of Levi, Pinchas, was the Levi. So we find initially two of them are involved in the ultimate intolerance for this. And at the end of the story, one is involved and the other one is still in that level, which is Levi, which is Pinchas. And the Medrash doesn't say that indicates that there was some kind of shortcoming in Shimon's zealotry. Doesn't say that. It just points out the fact where one descendant ended up going and where the other descendant remained steadfast where his original, the patriarch of his line, where he went and where it still remained. Okay, let's see the Chovos HaLevavos.
That's pretty fascinating.
400, fourth chapter, where it said that Hashem provides many things, everything in a person's life. And what's the challenge? To utilize it for what it's meant to be utilized for. Bechiras Tov. Put it in a context which is positive. He says the human being, although the extent of his life is determined and predetermined by Hashem, how many years you're going to live, nevertheless, you're going to live. So a person says, if I'm going to live that long, maybe I don't have to attend to all my needs, eating and sleeping and clothing and taking every level of responsible behavior. Hashem says you can live that long. That's not the way it works. Within that context, you have to live and make responsible choices. Within that context. That's in the physical. So just as in the physical, you go either way. You can actually abuse your health. You could live irresponsibly. And the years that are meant to be yours are not going to be yours. It depends how you actually invest your life. He say, well, as people, Hashem Yazor, Hashem will help. Unless you pick up, later, unless you have the food on the spoon, unless you pick up that spoon and put the food in your mouth, that food has no relevance to your existence. You have to earn money, purchase food, take the food, put it in your mouth. It's not happening by itself. Identically, all opportunities in life, you have to take initiatives. Hashem set the setting that the initiatives are available. Now it's for you to act. That's Bechira. Person would say, if it was predetermined that Hashem says, I'm going to live so many years, if that's the case, I don't have to what? What do I have to even sustain my body with food? I won't take any initiative to earn a living, to provide for myself. It's not even the consideration. It's total foolishness. You put yourself, your life in jeopardy. Well, if I'm meant to live, I could put myself in front of an oncoming train. It's not going to work. If I'm meant to live, I could drink poison. He'll go fight a lion, or put himself in a state where there's no way he could win. He'll throw himself into the ocean, into a fire. It's not even a consideration. The person has to be unstable to behave this way. Any rational person. So what does it mean? Hashem gives you a life, gives you opportunities. Now the question is, how do you utilize those opportunities? When we speak responsible, irresponsible, it's not on a physical level only. On a spiritual level, you have to utilize life responsibly. So if you believe in Hashem, and you believe that He's the one who provided these opportunities to be used in a particular context, you make certain kind of choices. But if you believe differently, and you feel that you have a right to cross certain lines, then you cross those lines. And that's the battle. We have no right to test God. We say, ain't some nes. You're not permitted to rely on a miracle. Hashem will perform a miracle, no. Person could experience miracle. You do your best. You have no choice. You're in the hands of Hashem. Like the doctor says to the patient, medically, we've done all we could do. Now what's left, you got to pray to God. We can't do more than that. And that's the truth. We take initiatives. You go to the doctor, and you follow his instruction. After everything's said and done, you mispal, Hashem should heal you. Even simultaneously, we pray He should heal you. But initially, in some chalanes, God gives you the means to what? Person throws himself in the ocean, and he could swim. He says, look, if I'm meant to live, I'm not swimming. I'll just let myself just there, and he goes underwater. You understand? He's not coming up unless he takes initiative to start swimming. You're not permitted to test God, because it's not going to help you. One of two reasons. The Gemara says in Shabbos that if a person does something and a miracle takes place, you have to be concerned, that is, Hashem, when he performs a miracle of a person, it may cost you that your merits have been depleted. Because maybe it's because of your worthiness. So because of your worthiness, but what's your worthiness? Your mitzvahs you did. So as a result of that, your mitzvah account is going to be what? Is going to be depleted. Therefore, you never know, chas v'shalom, when Hashem performs a miracle for a person, maybe it's a tremendous cost factor. We find by Avraham Avinu, when he went to battle against the 4 kings to save Lot, what happened? How does one person stand against the 4 mightiest pirate powers of the world? And he was the victor. The answer is because Avraham Avinu had tremendous merit. He brought monotheism to mankind. He's the first person to acknowledge Hashem as master. But what does it say? After the battle, Hashem says to Avram, Al tira Avram, ki schorcha harbi mod. You have nothing to worry about. Your reward is tremendous. So Rashi says, Chazal, he thought that maybe to merit these miracles, to defeat the 4 mightiest kings, like the Gemara says, he took straw and threw it, it became spears. He took sand, it became like bullets. That's how he defeated the enemy. But doing miracles. How? Maybe I forfeited my share in the world to come. Because to merit such miracles, the cost factor is so heavy, maybe I gave it all away. Hashem says, Al tir Avraham. Not only did you not deplete your merit, you even have additional merit. Because what you destroyed here was the ultimate Kiddush Hashem and so on and so forth. But what was Avraham? Avraham was worried. We shouldn't be worried that Hashem performs a miracle. So whenever you put yourself in jeopardy, even if you come out alive, you never know what that cost you. You never know. If you're in a position and Hashem performs a miracle that you, whatever it is, that you survive, okay? Even then, it's not simple. It's not you put yourself in that position. Something came upon you, and miraculously you were saved. Person, God forbid, is in the car accident, and he comes out without a scratch. It's a miracle. And everybody says it's a miracle. Is there a cost factor? You didn't put yourself there, but you never know. Maybe you needed schus to pull you out of that muck. Otherwise, maybe the person's life would have been compromised.